Welcome. You are listening to the Be a Better Being podcast hosted by Michelle Zellner and Sasha Berscheid. Michelle and Sasha are here to give you information and inspiration to help you live your healthiest, happiest lives. Thank you for tuning in. We hope you enjoy the show.
Welcome. Thank you for tuning in to the Be a Better Being podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Zellner. I am steering this ship solo today as far as the hosting situation. However, I am super excited to be joined by my friend Tammy Coia. We have some amazing synchronicities. And the first one, Tammy, I have to show you is this.
Go Pack Go.
So if you're watching on YouTube, you'll see I'm wearing a Green Bay Packers shirt. So we're going to talk about all those really random synchronicities that happen. But welcome to the show. Will you just give your listeners, my listeners, our listeners, a little background on you, and we're going to dive into some really great content.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Michelle. I'm Tammy Coia. I'm known as the Memoir Coach, and I've been coaching women writing their memoirs since officially 2008, but literally all my life I've been listening to stories. So I started out, teaching memoir workshops. I went into leading retreats and then private retreats. And I've just helped hundreds of women share their story in whatever way they want to. So that's a little bit about me.
Yeah, we are going to unpack a whole bunch more about you, but that is how I came to know you is when I decided to write my book and I knew that I needed the environment for myself to write it in. I started doing a Google search writing retreats and you came up. I looked at your website. We had a Zoom chat and literally in 30 seconds, I was booking a ticket to come see you. Kind of how that worked. At the time, you were living in Bellingham, Washington, and I got to spend a lovely, I want to say it was like less than 48 hours with you. Because of the timing of flights from Denver to Bellingham was very tricky to get there and it was very condensed, but it was so packed with everything. And I've told it before that by the time I left your place, 70% of the book was done. By the time I got off the plane and got back to Denver, over 80% of the book was done because I was in such a zone. I got on that plane flying home and just continued to write. And there were so many things as I stepped into your house that were just like, wait, what? First, I see Green Bay Packer things everywhere. And I know a lot of people listening don't know me that well, but for some who do, I'm a pretty avid Packer fan. So here this woman in Bellingham, Washington is a Packer fan. Wait, what? So I was like, tell me more about this. So let's talk about that first.
I thought that was so funny because people that know me know I love the Packers as well. And I'm not even from Wisconsin, but I've been a fan of, Brett Favre fan from years on. And I love them so much that when I heard he was retiring, that I got tickets and I went to Lambeau Field and I watched him play his last season, a game there live. So yeah, and that not knowing, just thought you were from Denver, not knowing you were a Packer fan either. So I love that story.
Right. That was the first one. And then I go upstairs to this lovely space that you've created for me to stay. And you have this really nice welcome basket with a beautiful card. And the card was Hawaii themed. So I thought, oh my goodness, what thoughtfulness that she went on my website. She learned a little bit about me. She saw my stuff that, I did a retreat to Kauai and I went to school in Hawaii. How thoughtful that she made that connection and put a card out that really, resonated with me in that. So I go downstairs and tell you this, and you say what?
What did I say? I'm not sure. I just know that that card was like I'd never even used that type of a card before, but for some reason it was like I was drawn to pulling that card for you and not knowing anything about your background really. So I love that, like you said, synchronicity and just that whole weekend that we shared together.
Yeah, when I told you that, you said, well, no, I didn't check you out at all. So I didn't know you had a connection to Hawaii. I was like, wait, what? Are you sure? So yeah, that just, I was already super excited for this experience, and those things just like made it magical. And, you know, I knew that I needed just time and space to write my book. So I know I was kind of a non-traditional client of yours, but tell us a little bit just what it's like to help somebody tell their story. What is that process like?
Yeah, well, you were definitely not the normal process. And I tell people this all the time because the funny thing is, I basically just fed you all weekend, if you remember that. Like, I know you eat every few
Oh
hours.
yes, that's
But
correct.
yeah, so I always laugh about our weekend together because I've never worked with somebody as motivated as you. And I mean, I just remember you at the kitchen where you had your computer and you were just there in the kitchen the whole time typing away your story. And
Yeah.
we would go for walks and you would, talk story. And then you come in and you just write it because you knew what you were writing. So generally that's not the way it works. But a lot of times I'll do a lot of teaching, but the first, let's say 12 hours that we're together, the first day that I work with somebody, it's really about me listening. And I think that's why so many people are able to share their stories because people want to be heard. So a lot of that is I am just a listener. So I kind of create an environment that's, warm and loving and, feels comforting to those who share. Because a lot of times people come with me, they have some really hard stories of their life that they want to get out. So that's what it is. It's about creating that environment where you feel safe to write.
Yeah, and you sure did. Yes, you fed me, you made sure I took breaks. We had that morning planning session. What was the agenda today? What are the goals today? What's the strategy for today? Checked in with me. Do you want to keep working? Do you want to take a break? Do you want to go into town? Do you want to shop? And I tell people all the time, when you set yourself up for success, you will be successful. And that's what I did. I invested in myself to go spend time. And I mean, I magically found the exact person that I needed because I don't know that somebody else would have taken care of me the way that you did. Let's go back into Tammy's life and talk about when you started writing for yourself and what that did for you. Why did you start writing and how did that shape you and what role did that play then as you enter adulthood and in 2008 decide to start helping other people write?
Yeah, good question. I tell people that I've basically been a writer all my life. Like, I think writing saved me. Like, as a child, lived in an alcoholic home. I felt very alone. My parents divorced when I was little, and then my dad disappeared from the scene when I was probably 10 years old, and a lot of heartache in my life. And so from early age, have always been a journaler, at that time a diary, right? And so I'd always write, in my diary and I tell stories. And I think the real change for me in writing was when I was in high school. It was like a senior project, and we had to go to a nursing home for, I think it was 6 weeks, and just, be with these elderly people. And at the beginning of that 6 weeks, the rest of my classmates, they couldn't wait for the 6 weeks to end. But when the 6 weeks ended, I still kept going because I was listening to all these stories of all these, elders of mine that were telling stories about when they were little. And I think from that time my life started leading me towards what I do now. And that was, listening to people's stories and helping them write their stories because it's true, everybody does have a story to share. So I think that's like writing has really saved me. Like, it's just, I always say the page can take it, right? So whatever you want to say, you can give it to the page.
Oh, I love that phrase. Give it to the page because the page can take it. It is something that as I work with people and coach people, I tell them all the time, you have to get the thoughts out of your head. We were not designed to sort things out, make sense of things in our heads. We were designed actually to talk about it with other people and to somehow tell the story. And that's what we actually used to do, right? Was sit around and that's what we should be doing with our friends and our families, but for a lot of reasons people don't want to tell their stories, they're afraid to. They don't even really know
Mhm.
what they should tell or talk about or how those things are making them feel inside. So would you recommend for somebody maybe just to start by journaling? Is that like kind of a first basic
Yeah, I
step?
think journaling is really great because it's something that you can, it's private. You don't have to share with anybody. And it's just a way for you to get your feet wet with telling your story. Like, what are those things that, bother you at night? What are those things that, you rush to tell somebody you first meet about who you are? And I recommend saving your journals because, it's great to look back and to see, what you were doing. Just like I always think of Facebook as kind of like an online journal where, like this week I saw, oh, 4 years ago I had Michelle at my house. So it's like an online
Another
journal.
another random synchronicity because when we booked this recording, I didn't really pay attention to the date, but it is exactly 4 years ago this weekend as we're recording this session that I was at your house. And yeah, it is. It is a great online journal. I'm not a fan of social media, as most people know, but I have been more intentional about posting things for the memory because it is nice when that memory comes up and you can look back. And my family and I just went through this like, oh, what were we doing in 2012, 13, 14? Look at all these things we've been doing every year at this same very time every year. So, yeah, I think whether it's the online journal or a good old fashioned pencil and paper one, or you like to type it out, maybe it's an audio journal. Maybe you just like to talk and record. I think that's really helpful for people too. And I mean, in some ways, that's what a podcast is for some
Yeah,
people.
exactly.
Well, tell us, if you would, a little bit more about your story and your journey and the things that you struggled with and journaled and how you've emerged into, man, even since I've known you, a lot of things have happened, right? So go back as far as you want to, but bring us up a little bit to present
Yeah.
time.
So I'm a mother and a grandmother. I have 4 kids. I have 6 grandchildren. And when I was raised in a very fundamentalist Baptist, church. So that kind of held me down. But that's a part of my journey, right? I think that helps me help people that are stuck in religious trauma, maybe, if you've had that fundamentalist background. But when I was 30, I had a moment in my life where I really came to my truth, and that was that I was gay and that I needed to be, fully who I was, knowing that the church, I would be left behind by the church. So I spent my 30s really struggling to figure out who I am, what I am. And a lot of that I wrote on the page. I have pages and pages of crying out and, figuring myself out. And then like I said, started, with memoirs, but my own personal life, I kept personal. Like I didn't share with a lot of people that I still kept that shame inside of me, which is why I'm glad I still have my journals because it's so great to look back and see what I really felt at that time. So fast forward 2008, I started my memoir coaching business. Still not telling anybody, I just let people know I have kids, I'm a grandma, when I became a grandma and letting them assume that I was straight. But I think the big turnaround was being authentic to myself. And, when I first started telling people, which was really kind of recently, that I'm, gay, I think was a big turning point in my life to finally say, I'm this is who I am. This is me and it's kind of my journey. So I think that was a big thing. Another big thing that happened with all this turnaround in my life as far as going to seminary as you mentioned was that when you came to visit, I had the little Chihuahua Bruce who was like, my heart. He's even mentioned it, your Bruce, in
Yeah,
your
he
Bruce and
is.
Sophia.
Bruce was my accountability buddy. I mean, he stood at my feet at attention when I was standing up at the counter typing out my notes, or if I was sitting down, he was up on the table. We have
Yes,
pictures
you
of
do.
it, and they come up every year on the memory, and they are still, they are my favorite pictures. Him and Sophia, yeah, those two little critters. They were as important a part of my experience as anything else that time I was with you.
Yeah. And I think so it'll be 2 years ago now that he's been gone. It's going on 3 years. But so when he left, and it was kind of a tragic thing, the door was left open and I was searching for him. I didn't know what happened to him. So when that happened, here I always give the advice, when you're going through something, go to the page. But to be honest with you, when that happened, I was so devastated that, like, for the first time I couldn't write. Like, and as a memoir coach, it felt terrible because it's like, this is what I tell people all the time. But it took me a while of healing, and that whole this was before COVID happened. And part of my healing process was that was planning on hiking the Camino de Santiago, which is 500 miles in Spain, because I thought, oh, that'll be a good process for me just to really heal my heart. And then COVID hit, and like all my plans, fell apart. And it was kind of like yeah, I didn't know what to do. Like, I thought, okay, then I'll hike the Appalachian Trail. So I drove in my car all the way to Georgia. This is when there's no cars on the road, only those big trucks that are hauling groceries. That's the only thing on the road as I was driving across. But it was part of my healing journey as well, of just going, being alone, seeking something. And then I really decided that I wanted to, part of that healing process was healing my heart about God and religion and who is God. So I looked into seminary because I really started thinking about, I wanted to do something as in the form of chaplaincy as well. So I'm now in my last semester, and I just have about 3 months left, and it's exactly what I've been doing along. It's just in a different mode of listening to people's stories and being there at people's time when they need somebody to talk to.
Well, we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute because I do want to kind of hear more about that particular experience, but I want to circle back to a couple of things. One, as you are the memoir coach telling people to write their truth and you're not speaking yours. I know for me, I've talked about this on the podcast before, when I was a personal trainer and I'm coaching and being the cheerleader, and yet I feel like a fraud because I'm not necessarily, walking the walk that I'm talking because I don't have a healthy relationship with food and, all of that stuff that really kind of makes you feel like you walk away like, oh, I'm such a fraud. And it feels yucky. Did you have any of that internal conflict as you're sitting there telling these women, hey, speak your
Yeah.
truth? Like what was it like inside for you?
Yeah, it really was. I kept telling myself, well, I'm the teacher. They don't want to hear my story, but I didn't feel genuine. Like, when I start to tell my story, it was like, I was afraid of judgment. And that all comes back to that whole fundamentalist, mentality of that I was bad, or that, I was not doing something right. And it was working through all of this and realizing, you know what, if people don't like me, they don't like me. There's nothing I can do about it, but I have to speak my truth. I have to be open to everybody. And that's what I've started doing in the last few years. And it's true. It's like, it changes your life.
Yeah. So tell us, how did that change your life when you finally just came out in full force as who you are? How did people receive it? The people you were afraid of judging, did they? Are they still in your life? How did it change you from a physical, mental, and emotional standpoint to finally unload this secret you've been keeping?
Yeah. And I love that question because it's so true. The things that we think are these big secrets, when you put it out into the light, it really disappears, So I've had so much love over this whole situation, is all I can say, is that people aren't surprised. It's like something that, I've held, you know, close to my heart, and thinking that, well, this person won't like me, or that person. And it's been the opposite. Which it's funny because I see people when they share their stories too, that same thing of when it opens up, that it's like, wow. And yet I didn't see it for myself. Like, oh, that's something that I don't want to share, but it's true. It's really, I think we make something so big and it becomes bigger when it's inside of us, and then we let it out. It's like it is a gift that you share with other people.
It is. And Sasha and I have talked a lot about being your authentic self, the good, the bad, the ugly, all of it. The things that you think are ugly that nobody else does. A lot of times we do. We create those stories in our heads. And same when I finally like said it all out loud, put it all in a book. Well, here it is. Like me, don't like me, mad at me for what I don't, this is my story. I'm not making it, it is what it is. And it is very, very freeing to be living your life in alignment with your truth, and so it's funny as, the coach or the teacher in a lot of ways has to become the student first and follow their own advice, and it can be very hard to do, but you're not your best coach or teacher unless you are your authentic self. I think the other thing that's interesting, and I know I experienced this too, was, your go-to was to journal or to write. And yet when you're in the midst of something so traumatic and so heavy, you're not ready to do that. You have to process through the grief and the emotion. My hardest part about writing the book was the chapters and the information about Travis. And I could not have written that when I was in the midst of it. There's no way. It was actually relatively easy to write it when I was removed from it, because I could write it because I'd already gone through the healing. For me, the writing of it wasn't part of the healing process. It was reflecting back on the experience and having already gone through the healing and all the things I learned along the way. And I don't know if that's something that help people figure out. When do you write? If you're feeling blocked, if you don't know what to write, maybe it's just because you haven't healed and gone through that yet.
Yeah, it's so true that when you're in the midst of something, that's really the time to reflect, and to jot down whatever you can to remember that moment and those feelings. But one of the questions I ask people too is, especially if it's a memoir of something of significance, is how far back it has been. You know what I mean? Because if it's true, like if you're going through something right now, that's not really the time to write and publish it, because your feelings are going to change over time, and you're going to really, it's going to sink in, and you're going to learn all that you can and then share, those lessons. So yeah, you're right, especially like dealing with Travis, like enough time had gone by that you're able to look back with those new lens of eyes.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's how we choose to learn the lessons or not, right? Is because we've done that reflection and the introspection, and we've looked at things from a variety of angles. And when you're in it, you see nothing but you're, right in front of you. And there's too much emotion generally for that. I still think journaling or getting the thoughts out is helpful. And maybe those will be helpful for later if you do want to explore how to write more of that story. If for some reason, people think because you've written a book that you can now tell people how they should write their book. I've had a lot of people ask me for help writing their book. I'm like, I'm not a writing coach. But here's what I would ask you is, what's the purpose of the book? Why are you writing it? Is it for you? Is it for others? Do you want to be a best-selling author and try to pay your bills with it? Is it just to leave a legacy for your family? Because I think all of those answers are going to determine how you tell your story. Is that a question that you ask people as well when
Yeah,
when they're
definitely.
getting ready?
Yeah, and asking them like who their audience is, because that's really important. And like you said, most of my clients really are writing for their family. Like your book is a little different because it's like this model of what you've been doing and really the life lessons that you've learned. But a lot of my students really just write for their family. Some of them have a story that they want to put out for a bigger audience. But it's true, it's really like, what is your purpose? Because honestly, if you're writing because you think you can write the next bestseller, I mean, it's such a little tiny margin.
Yes. Yeah, that is a very sad truth. That's a whole other podcast conversation about, the whole book industry and the publishing industry itself. So let's now fast forward to more recent times. So when I met you, you were living in Bellingham. You also had a place in Palm Springs, California. Is that correct
Mhm.
still? So you were doing retreats. People come to you, you go to people. I know you've been all over the country
Mhm.
doing private retreats, writing retreats for people, which is really cool. And I know you're still doing that. You host amazing retreats in Corfu, which that is going on my vision board here in close one of these years, because I do have another book in me, and I feel like a writing retreat in Corfu is
I
probably
think,
where
yeah.
that book should be written. Um, but you're no longer in Bellingham. Right? Yeah, things have changed a lot. You decided to start going to seminary school, and take us from there.
So this is what's an interesting thinking of synchronicity and timing, right? So when I was looking at seminaries, I wanted a program that was an interfaith program because I like really my God is really nature. Like I just that's how I feel closest to, spirit. So I found a seminary in Minneapolis and it was online, which was fine because at that time where was I? I think I was in Georgia. That's when I was finishing up, like, doing some of the hiking when I first started doing it. And then I moved back to California. So the interesting thing is, I know you've talked about vision boards before, and I've done vision boards as well. And this 2 years ago, I started thinking about this, vision board idea, except for I did it in writing. And I started thinking about, like what does my perfect life look like? What is my, and I felt like I had been living it, right, for many years. But the only thing I was really missing was having a partner in my life. And so I started thinking about who would my perfect partner be? So instead of doing it as a vision board, I did it actually as a writing paper and I wrote, I filled up a page of all, and I was really specific, everything that I, wanted in a partner. And then in one of my classes, I have a seminary friend who'd said, I said, why? And she was gay too with a partner. And she said, why are you single? And I was like, I don't know, I just not picky, whatever. And she said, well, I have somebody I want you to meet. Um, would you be interested in meeting them? She lives in Iowa. And I'm all, Iowa? Like literally, I didn't even know where Iowa was. So, long story short, she gave us each email. We started talking, and literally, this person was everything on my list and more. Like, I was so specific, and she actually was everything. Little did I know that at the same time I was writing out my vision board, she was actually making a vision board. And her
I just got chills.
her vision board was, I guess, me, because everything she had on her vision board was me. And I mean, talk about like amazing timing and everything. And, I wasn't looking for somebody, she wasn't, but our friend was, it was a mutual friend, was very like, no, I think you guys should meet. And literally when we met, it was like we both just knew.
Everything happens when it's supposed to happen.
Does.
That's one of my mottos. And, Sasha would say it's divine intervention, all working its way through. And,
Mhm.
whether you believe whatever you believe in, these things, I don't think there are accidents at all, and obviously I had the pleasure of meeting Susan I guess almost a month ago now. So here we go. Let's talk about another synchronicity. You tell me, I see that you've met somebody, and you tell me that she has a family who has a place in Breckenridge, Colorado, and you're going to be coming to Denver area and up to the mountains in the summer. And I was like, okay, well, we must get together. I must meet her, all this good stuff, right? And knowing how busy people's schedules are in the summer, the likelihood I'm going to be here when you're
Right.
here and you can see me, I mean, who knows? Well, we get close to time, and yeah, I'm around this weekend. Great. We'll make a date. And then I thought, you know what? Wait a minute. Susan's from Iowa. My very favorite band in the whole wide world, the Nadas, is from Iowa. And you know what? They're playing at the Little Bear that weekend. It's their annual summer camp where they come and play 3 shows, Friday, Saturday, Sunday at the Little Bear. It's the weekend you're here. I text you, ask Susan if she knows the Nadas.
Yep, she does.
Of course she does.
I love it, and she loves the Nadas, and she'd never seen them in person. And
Right. Yeah. So it was, I mean, she hauled the whole family. So the family that y'all were visiting, they all came. I got to see you. I got to meet her. We got to see the Nadas. We're not going to go into the little issue that happened with that, but we got to see them. I think they're playing at the Iowa State Fair this weekend. Are you going?
yes, I am.
Yes. Well, so here we are now, another thread that binds us together forever. And I know that, there are some people you meet that are going to be fleeting, and that's okay, right? That they're there for a reason. There are other people you meet that when you meet them, you pretty much know at your core that they are going to be in your life forever. And I knew that when I met you. There are way too many things already connecting us, and now there's more. So I am incredibly grateful to myself, honestly, that I invested my time, energy, and money in me, which led me to you, which led to this really great friendship and fun watching you just see what's next and know that you are sharing your gifts to help other people tell their stories, which I know is helping them live a better life, and just so many layers and steps to all of this that, again, everything happens because it's supposed to, and I love this thing that's happened. So anything that we haven't covered that you want to share with the audience, please,
No, I'm
let's make sure we
just
get that.
like I every time I'm around you, I just love it. Like I know like everything that you do in your life, it's exciting for me because you've taken it and ran with it. And now you're doing a podcast and you're amazing. I'm just so proud of you.
Oh, well, Tammy, please. Thank you. I appreciate that. But I mean, you were a very intricate part of that process. I know you like time wise, it was tiny, but scope, it was huge, huge. I don't know if my book would even be done here 4 years later had I not done that and had I not met you. And I might have met the memoir coach and she would have been like, "Well, why are you writing about all that? You really should be doing this." And she wouldn't have understood that, no, 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 I got the book. You just need to take care of me. And you didn't question it. You didn't say, "No, no, no, I'm the coach. You should do this the way I think you should do this," which is how a lot of people coach, right? And so it was the perfect fit. It was the perfect time, and thank you for what you do, because I know when people can get their story out, whether anybody ever reads it or not, just being able to say it, share it, get it out of your head, that is for so many people a form of healing, and it's therapeutic. And when you can feel better physically, mentally, and emotionally about yourself, you will go on to live a better life, to help people be better. Everybody benefits. So if there is anybody out there who has gone through yucky stuff, which that is everybody,
Yeah.
do you have to write a memoir? Not necessarily, but do you want to maybe explore telling your story? I would say so. And I am going to tell you, I mean, Tammy, you have online writing groups, you have, private retreats, you have this amazing one to Greece every year. So we'll put all the contact information in the show notes, but just quickly tell people how they can find more about you.
Okay, so you can go to my website. It's the Memoir Coach .com, and that will tell you about the retreat coming up in Corfu, and that's going to be next May. And there's also my email, the memoircoach at gmail.com as well.
Fantastic. Well, my friend, this has been lovely, as I knew it would be. It's always great. I always feel better talking to you because you just have this very loving, peaceful, soft way about you. And, if somebody who like me is a little like, "Ah, rah, rah," it's nice to have that. So
No,
thank you so much for joining today. Have a blast at the Nadas tonight. Sing your heart out for
I
me.
know.
I'll be there in spirit with you all. And I can't wait until I get to see you again in person.
Sounds good. Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you. And everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you will take this time and reflect, and, maybe you'll think about getting some thoughts out of your head, journaling, but you do know that you get to go and be a better being.
Thank you for listening to the Be a Better Being podcast. Michelle and Sasha hope that what you heard today inspires you to embrace this journey of life with an open mind, a kind heart, and a willingness to learn and evolve. If you enjoyed the content, please help spread their message by subscribing, sharing, and leaving a 5-star review. If you have a show topic idea or would like to be a guest, please visit betterbeings.net and fill out a contact form. Until next time, go and be a better being.